What's happening? Happy Friday to all of you. Thanks for joining me. Everything Pats, a New England Patriots podcast. And yes, as you can tell, I am back at the home studio, back being live. Happy to be here on a Friday. Feeling better than I was earlier in the week when we broke the news of Stefon Diggs. Feels better, feels right, and we have a lot to get to today. I mean, we've got so much to get to. Another former Patriots captain released by the team today. Stefon Diggs just stepped away from the podium at Gillette. We'll cover what he had to say. And we'll have a lot of draft notes. A lot of what's happening this week, maybe next week, what's already been happening beforehand as we get ready for the draft. Of course, yesterday was the 4-week mark. 4 weeks away from the NFL draft from last night. Can't wait. Let's begin with Ja'Whaun Bentley. Ja'Whaun Bentley was released earlier today. It was announced by the team a couple of hours ago. I'm not surprised. We've talked about the numbers game at linebacker. The Patriots, of course, they've added Robert Spillane. They've brought in Gibbons. They kept Ellis. And we were wondering about the fit of the former linebackers, guys that are more big, downhill, not as athletic, not as side to side as what Mike Vrabel and his defense usually entails. So I don't think Ja'Whaun Bentley was a great fit for this defense. So I'm not surprised he's gone. He's coming off a major injury. Of course, again, he has been the captain or one of the captains of this team. And it certainly feels like Mike Vrabel is trying to reestablish the leadership of his program. And that somewhat makes sense, right? If not makes sense totally. Because if you look at it from Mike Vrabel's point of view, he's saying to himself, hey, look, I don't want people talking about yesteryear. I don't want people referencing the last few years. I don't want people who were leaders of the team in that room who experienced back-to-back 4-win seasons. I want to start this thing fresh. And so I think he is trying to start this thing fresh by getting rid of some of the former leaders of this team. And if they don't fit, they don't fit. Davon Godchaux, it was a fit thing. Ja'Whaun Bentley, I believe, is a fit thing. Jonathan Jones, I believe he could have fit with this football team, but he's 31, 32 years old, and they wanted to move in a different direction at cornerback, bringing in the younger and, quite frankly, better Carlton Davis. So this is part of a reset. When you bring the new sheriff in town like Mike Vrabel is going to reset things, and that's what we're seeing play out. Now, I know the biggest question for a lot of people, and it was my first question looking at this move, why was it Ja'Whaun Bentley? Why was it not Jahlani Tavai? How does Bentley go before Tavai goes? I think it has to do with the money. That's what I believe is happening here. Now, what do I mean by that? Ja'Whaun Bentley doesn't have any guaranteed money left on his contract. So you cut him. You move on, you say, okay, free cutting of the cord. We're moving forward. We have respect for you. You were cleared physically. We're going to move on from you. Tavai, of course, signed that extension last year. So maybe the Patriots are trying to get something for Tavai before they let him go. And Tavai is younger, I do believe. Tavai has been more healthy than Bentley. So maybe this is a situation where the Patriots are trying to get something for Tavai, trying to trade him for an asset, especially given they gave him the contract extension last offseason. So that's probably why. That's probably why Bentley's first to go before Tavai. However, I again have some trouble with the timing of this move. I have trouble with releasing Ja'Whaun Bentley right before the celebratory introductory press conference. They knew Stefon Diggs was going to be here today. They understood Stefon Diggs was going to be doing a press conference. They could have released Bentley yesterday. They could have released Bentley Wednesday. They could have released Bentley last night. But again, they do the same thing that they did with David Andrews, which is to release a veteran captain, a guy that a lot of fans love, a guy that's done pretty much everything the right way, and they release that guy on the same day they introduce the new talent. And again, it just doesn't fit or feel right with me. I'm not going to make as big of a deal about this one as David Andrews because Andrews had been around here longer. Andrews, was like the team spokesman the last 2 years, always going up there after a brutal, pitiful loss. But it does feel weird that you are releasing these well-respected locker room guys who have seemingly done everything right. You're releasing them on the same day that you're introducing the new shiny toy. I don't like it. I didn't like it with Andrews. I don't like it with Bentley. I'm not saying it's the worst thing in the world, but I certainly do not like it. It gives the Patriots an opportunity to dodge questions if they get asked questions. It's a smooth way to dismiss a popular player quietly, right? You just kind of underneath the radar on a Friday, you release them. And I just think it's part of the bigger picture that I mentioned a few moments ago. Mike Vrabel making a statement. His message is rather obvious. We're out with the old, we're in with the new. And I don't have a problem with that message. I do not have a problem with the message of out with the old, in with the new. We're resetting things here. This is a new culture. This is my team, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't love the timing of releasing guys who have done everything right, coming off big-time injuries, former captains on the same day that they bring in the new shiny toys. Don't love it. And I know it's a cold business. So thank you to Ja'Whaun Bentley. Won a Super Bowl with the Patriots. I certainly appreciate what he did for the organization. I thought he played hard every single time he was out there. I thought he was very accountable and responsible on the microphone when he was asked questions. And I'm sure he'll land somewhere else in the NFL. So props to Ja'Whaun Bentley. All right, before we get to that new shiny toy and Stefon Diggs and what he had to say, Stefon Diggs had some very interesting things today to say. And I think if you're watching this live at the podium, right, on YouTube, if you were watching it like I was pretty impressed with Diggs. A number of different ways, which I'll get into. But first, don't forget to click the thumbs up button as you watch us on YouTube. Continue to like this podcast as you watch it, whether you hate watch it, but you want to keep us alive, or you love what we do, you like what we do. Don't forget to click that thumbs up as you watch YouTube. I know it's a little bit tiring for me to always say it, but frankly, it's the only way I can try to build this brand out is by asking all of you to help us with the algorithm. So don't forget to click the thumbs up. Don't forget to throw a comment in. I see many of you commenting. I see Mike Larry saying, dude was never healthy, talking about Ja'Whaun Bentley. Yeah, he had a lot of injuries. Caveman Curtis, what's up, Nick? Hope you had a great vacation. Happy Friday. Let's go. Had a really good vacation till I got a little bit under the weather. Charlie jumps in with a super chat, $10 super chat. Thank you, Charlie. Welcome back. Appreciate having you back, Charlie, on this Friday afternoon. So don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, and of course, don't forget to subscribe. We're less than 200 subscribers away of hitting our 6,500 subscriber goal, which we want to hit by the first night of the draft. We are going to go live the night of the draft like we did last year. Who knows how long it's going to be? Who knows how many beers I'm going to drink? Who knows how happy we will be as a community on draft night? So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All right. Let's get to Diggs. So Diggs had his press conference just about an hour ago. He was asked about the process of coming to New England, the visit he had. He said he already had conversations prior to the visit. Now, this is interesting that he already had conversations with the Patriots prior to his visit. How many conversations were there? I don't know. But to me, the more interesting aspect is the timing. Because how early did the Patriots get involved with Diggs? How early did they pick up that phone? Did they pick up the phone while they were also trying to negotiate with Chris Godwin's agents, back channeling, right, behind closed doors? Was it that early in the process? Did they reach out to Diggs when they knew that they did not get Godwin? Did they reach out to Diggs during the DK Metcalf conversations and found out that they might have a shot at Diggs? They found out reportedly that DK did not want to come to New England. Did they pivot to Diggs after DK Metcalf was gone, traded to Pittsburgh? Did they pivot when they realized that Cooper Kupp was not going to be the option? Or were they having the conversation with Diggs while they were also interested in Cooper Kupp, knowing that, hey, we've got Diggs. Diggs is interested. We'll be able to land him if we give him the contract that he wants. And if we can bring him in, we think he might even be better than Cooper Kupp. I don't know. But when was the pivot to Diggs? Because he said there were multiple conversations before the visit, and we know that the visit was, what was it now? Losing track of time, last week, right? Last Wednesday night was his dinner. So, where was the pivot? When was the pivot? And how did those conversations go? He also said that he met up with Todd Downing during his visit, which I think is something not to overlook. His history with Todd Downing. Downing knows him. He knows Downing, so he could reconnect. He felt a sense of familiarity with Todd Downing, which always helps when you're visiting. I don't know if you've ever done an interview before. You go somewhere else. I've done interviews afar, right? I've done interviews in different states for radio, and I fly out there with Kelly, and you meet all of these people, and it's a very intimidating thing. And you don't want to be overwhelmed, but it helps if you know somebody in the building that you visit. It makes you feel a little bit more calm. So that was Todd Downing, apparently. Diggs also spoke about Mike Vrabel. I think it was Karen Guregian, the OG. She asked, was Vrabel a pull? Was he a reason why you decided to come to New England? And Diggs said that Vrabel was 100% part of the draw coming to New England. He said, Vrabel is a former player. The player-coach relationship works really well because they've been there before. They've done that. I thought it was fascinating that Stefon Diggs said that, at times when you play for coaches that have not played the game at the NFL level, when you play for some of those coaches, they come across as robots. And it's more analytical, and it's more about, what the stat sheet says you should do, what the analytics say you should do. So I found that to be very interesting because we always have this conversation in all sports about how much should analytics play a role in old school thought versus new school thought, and how much does it matter if somebody has played the game before, because you have so many young coaches in their 30s now that have never played the game, many of them at any level. Some of them at high school, nothing beyond that. And they walk in and they run a program, right? They run the locker room. Many people look at Mike McDaniel and wonder if that's a part of the missing component in Miami, is that he can't necessarily relate at all times because he's more of the X's and O's offensive guru guy, right? Now, that worked for Sean McVay. Not everybody is the same. We don't throw everybody in the same bucket. But it was interesting to hear Stefon Diggs say, playing for Vrabel, coming here, he was 100% of the draw. He was 100% of a draw, right? Like he could help, because I believe playing for a guy who's played in the NFL before, he can relate to me better than other guys might be able to relate to me. He doesn't come across as a robot. And I think that can put you in the mind of many players who are trying to make these decisions. Do I want to sign with New England? Do I want to sign with another team? Well, the Patriots have Mike Vrabel, and we talked about it before free agency. Would Mike Vrabel really make a difference in free agency? And by the sounds of it, he has made a difference. There have been multiple players that have gone up there and talked about they want to play for Vrabel. He's played in the league before. He's won before. He's coached before in the league, and they've seen how he coached and how he got along with his players, good and bad. And it certainly feels like Diggs is a part of that company, looking at Vrabel and saying, dude played. He knows what it takes. I want to play for him. He's not a robot. Diggs talked about Vrabel playing with an energy, a moxie. And that also made me think about how Diggs is very much like a Vrabel player. And we had a lot of the reports leading up to the Diggs signing about how Diggs is a very Vrabel-like player, how he plays physical. He's not afraid to go across the middle. He does all the dirty work, right? And so when Diggs says that he appreciates Vrabel and he knows that Vrabel played with an energy, a moxie, I think that is Diggs recognizing, hey, look, I'm going to play for a coach who kind of approaches the game in a similar way that I do. Moxie, swag, confidence, physicality, energy. That's what I'm about. That's what he's about. Diggs said something cool. He talked about Mike Vrabel being around greatness and breeding greatness. Thought that was a great quote. All right, as far as physically, big question about Diggs, right? We discussed it on Tuesday night when the agreement became official, at least on Twitter. We talked about, is Diggs healthy? Is he a guy that's actually going to be able to play relatively early in the year? Adam Schefter, while we were doing the podcast on Tuesday night from that lovely Virginia Beach hotel, it really was a nice place. Had a nice water view on the balcony. We were talking about it, and Schefter tweeted that Diggs is on track, quote unquote, to play week 1. And Diggs was asked about how he feels. Diggs said he's ahead of schedule. He's trying to stay ahead of schedule. Called himself a hard worker. So he tries to put a lot on his plate at one time and says that he's trying to reel it back a little bit. So he doesn't want to feel so good about how he feels that he tries to do too much, gets re-injured, and then takes a big step back. So he said, look, I'm a hard worker. I love the grind. I embrace the grind. But at times, especially with this situation, he mentioned, he's never been injured with a significant injury like this one, that now he's trying to teach himself to slow down a bit. Not always be in fifth gear. Take a breath, slow down. You're coming back from an ACL, and you don't want to put too much on that plate, which will inherently hurt your chances of getting back early. But he said he's ahead of schedule. The way I would look at this is if Stefon Diggs is out on the field playing any kind of snap of consequence before October, that's a major win. I said this on Tuesday night. I expect him to be on the PUP. I expect him to miss the first, month or so of the season, maybe even the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. I don't want him to rush back to only get re-injured. And if he ends up getting on the field at any point before October of 2025, that's a win for Diggs. It's a win for the Patriots. It's a win for Drake May. And, of course, it's a win for us in the media and a win for fans. But I am not anticipating Stefon Diggs being back before October. If he gets back before October, that's great news. What did Diggs have to say about helping the young wide receivers? That's something that we addressed on Tuesday night, right? This idea of Diggs walking into that wide receiver room and helping the young guys. What did Diggs have to say about that? Let you know in a minute. First, Anonymous drops a $20 super chat. Welcome back, Nick. Thank you, Anonymous. I appreciate you. I know you're a part of the Patreon page. I am going to get some Patreon content out there today. I'm going to get an off-the-cuff done for all of you on that Patreon page. If you want to check out the Patreon, by the way, this week I did like a 45-minute podcast on the Celtics sale. It's patreon.com/Nick Cattles, Cattles, $5 a month. Thank you, Anonymous, for that super chat. Terry Grant, our friend Terry, an OG of this podcast, $50 super chat. Thank you, Terry. Glad to catch a live podcast for a bit while I get on the road. Hopefully you catching a live podcast means that you're done with physical therapy. If not, I hope the physical therapy is near an end. Our friend Terry had a knee replacement. I believe it's her second knee replacement recently, and she's battling back. So I appreciate you, Terry. Thank you so much for that $50 super chat. All right, let's get to what Stefon Diggs had to say about helping the young wide receivers. Here's his quote, and I'm typing this up, by the way, as he's talking, so there might be a word or two missing. Don't hold me to every single solitary syllable. But here's what he said about helping the young wide receivers. He said that more so experience from the highs and the lows. Everybody wants to have success in this league. Feel like I can help more on the lows. So if a guy's flying high, if a guy's playing well, if a guy's figuring it out, he's not going to get in the way. But if he sees one of the younger wide receivers kind of struggling a little bit, Joe Namath struggling. If he sees the young receiver, Jalen Polk, Ja'Whaun Baker, whoever, if he sees one of the young receivers dealing with some mental stuff, I mean, just think of last year, right? I mean, Jalen Polk obviously was mentally fried very early in the season. He was toast and never really came back. So what Diggs is saying is, hey, look, if I see somebody that's dealing with the lows, that's how I'm going to help them out. I'm going to work with them. I'm going to help them through those lows. He said it wasn't until the fourth game of his career that he got his opportunity. He said that, sometimes the timing is off. In his rookie season, he sat the bench for the first 3 games. Quote, sitting on the bench for 3 games my rookie season was rough for me. Everything isn't going to go your way. I told myself when I did get the opportunity, I wasn't going to come off. So he didn't have instant success week 1 when he became an NFL wide receiver. He had to go through that mental toll of feeling like he was ready, practicing his butt off, and then sitting for the first 3 weeks and trying to deal through that process and have patience, right? And obviously deal with some frustration. So he's been there before. So if somebody's struggling like that, he has the experience and the knowledge to go to that person and say, look, I didn't play until my 4th game. And then I did this, and this. Just, stay with it. He then said it's not all about the X's and O's. You've got to go out there and make plays. He said it's also being about a professional. how to handle business each and every day. It'll go a long way. And so that's why I talked about this on Tuesday night. If you're Jalen Polk, you're Javon Baker, if those guys are even still here, who knows? But you start training camp and you have somebody in that locker room now, and Stefon Diggs, and last year was supposed to be KJ Osborne, and it didn't work out. You have somebody in Stefon Diggs that knows what it takes to be a professional. He works his tail off. He is somebody that is, going to be there every single day. He's going to put the work in, and he's going to teach the young guys. He's going to show the young guys, this is how you handle your business each and every day. You don't take a day off. You come out, you embrace the grind, be a professional. And that should help. That should help the younger receivers figure some things out. I mean, we can sit there and talk about KJ Osborne, and, Osborne was a good player in Minnesota, but he's a 3/4, right? When Stefon Diggs walks into that wide receiver room and he tells you how he thinks you should be doing your business, Stefon Diggs has been one of the best receivers in the NFL for the past 9-10 years. And that holds a different level of gravitas in that room. And if you're Jalen Polk, you're going to sit there and go, Stefon Diggs is telling me this. I best be listening. So I think it's a great move to have Diggs in that wide receiver room to help those young guys. Diggs was asked about being a fiery competitor and how, if he's learned how to exhibit that competitive energy positively. And my favorite quote from Diggs was, I'd rather beat you than argue with you. I'd rather beat you than argue with you. He said that when I was younger, I was so caught up going back and forth with someone. I'd rather give you a spanking. And that's the kind of swag, confidence, mentality, right, that Diggs has. I don't think any of us should expect him to be the same guy. We talked about that on Tuesday night. He's not Diggs from 3 years ago. He's more probably like a 1B, 2 if he's working, right? But he still has that mentality of, when I was younger, I used to go back and forth and talk bleep to people, right? I used to get wrapped up in that whole machismo thing. Now I don't even care about yapping. I'm done yapping as much as I used to, because now I just want to beat you. I want to be across from you, and I want to beat you. As he put it, I'd rather give you a spanking than arguing back and forth. I loved it. I did love that. Has he become a better teammate channeling things? He said, yeah. He's learned that he can't lead everybody the same. Quote, my maturation process comes from more experience. I've done a lot of inner work. I feel like I'm in a great space. And there's been a ton of work done by the local media to, share stories, anecdotes, quotes from coaches and texts from coaches, conversations with those guys that have worked with Diggs that say, the reputation is off. Yeah, he's a diva. And after a certain point, he probably becomes a little bit too much a pain in the tuk-tuk, and you got to move on. But he's a guy who's going to work hard. He's going to, he's going to do the right things on the practice field. He's going to help the younger guys. And that reputation of him just being all about himself is not the correct reputation. And so I liked hearing Diggs say today, I feel like I'm in a great space. I've done a lot of inner work. And, my maturation process comes from being more experienced. And that's with anything you do, right? That's with anything you do. If I was asked to do a podcast like this when I first broke into the business, I would probably urinate down my leg. I'd be all hemming and hawing constantly. On Drake May, here's the last thing we'll do about Diggs, and then I want to get into the draft, because we got a lot of draft stuff that we've got to cover. I don't want to go too long on a Friday, but we got a lot of draft stuff coming out. So here's the final thing I'll talk about with Diggs. He said this about Drake May, quote, it's crazy because when you ask around, he has a lot of similarities. Well, people say through the grapevine, he acts a lot like Josh, obviously talking about Josh Allen. And that's my guy. So that just, again, is the latest example of the league talking about May. People within the league feel like Drake May is legitimate. They feel like he has that talent. They feel like he can be a top 10 franchise quarterback. He's not there. There's no guarantee. But the league respects Drake May. They think he's a really good football player. They think he's a damn good quarterback. And many people in the league, obviously, according to Diggs, they make that comparison. It's not just talking heads on TV or, talking mouths flapping their gums in microphones like myself. It's people in the NFL making those comparisons between Drake May and Josh Allen. And so Diggs said, yeah, I've heard those similarities, through the grapevine. People say he acts a lot like Josh. And that Josh, that's my guy. So he talked about working with the young quarterback, said that he's been doing this for 10 and a half years. He won't say 11 because he got hurt in the middle of last year. He says he's been around a lot of quarterbacks. Once you know someone on a more personal level, you can work with them, on different things. He said he's got the fiery mindset. Talking about Drake May, my job is to get up and catch the ball. He said, my job is not to develop the quarterback. My job is to play for the quarterback, go out there and catch the football. And he said he looks forward to being one of the weapons for Drake May. So I thought it was a good introductory press conference. Some very interesting quotes from Stefon Diggs. I think fans are going to love him. Very confident dude. Seems to have a great sense of humor. And, wanted to at least put across the idea that I've matured a ton. I've learned from things, and I'm here to help this football team. Talked about how he thinks this team's going in the right direction. They've added a lot of talent. Spoke very highly of Mike Vrabel. So good press conference. All right. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. We're going to get into the draft talk right now. Again, click that thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Let's crush the algorithm. Drive the traffic. Throw your comments in. I see people talking about Tyler Lockett. Yes, Jeremy Fowler of ESPN recently over the last couple of days reported that the Patriots are interested in Tyler Lockett. There are some people saying that the Patriots are going to go out and sign another wide receiver. That could be Lockett. If you do go out and sign another receiver or you draft a receiver like Travis Hunter, if he falls to you, it's going to become somewhat of a numbers game in that wide receivers room, and you got to get rid of some of the guys. So that'll be an interesting part of the conversation as well. But don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, don't forget to subscribe. The goal is 6,500 subscribers. We are less than 200 away. We want to hit that mark on draft night, which was 4 weeks away from last night. So let's do it. Like, comment, subscribe. Spotify, Apple Pods, friends, you know the deal. Rate, review, follow. Help us out over there. All right, latest draft notes. Let's get into it. So Abdul Carter made some news today. He is going to be visiting the Patriots. This should not be a shocker. The Patriots have the 4th pick in the draft. Abdul Carter is pretty much seen as a guarantee to go somewhere in the top 4. Carter is reportedly not going to visit any teams outside of the top 4. So the information that he has is telling him that he's going to go 1, 2, 3, or 4. So he is going to visit with the Patriots. You have to believe that Carter is interested in playing for Mike Vrabel. When we look at Vrabel's style, when we look at Terrell Williams' style, the physicality, the violence, the athleticism, I mean, Carter would be an absolutely perfect fit for this defense. He's, a much better Harold Landry type player, right? I mean, he'd be perfect in this defense. So you have to imagine Carter would love to have a conversation with Mike Vrabel, pick his brain. I just have to imagine, again, I could be totally wrong, but I would think that conversation would go very well. So Carter is going to take a visit. Meanwhile, Mike Vrabel, speaking of visiting, he visited the Ohio State University's pro day. And according to Dan Hope of 11 Warriors, which is an Ohio State brand, it's a website, Hope tweeted that Vrabel spent a lot of time with Josh Simmons. Now, Josh Simmons is a very interesting name. He played left tackle for Ohio State last year. We've talked some about Simmons, some about the questions surrounding him. He had some great film. That film was against a lot of middle tier, if not less than middle tier talent. Simmons, unfortunately, the way the schedule unfolded, he had a serious injury before Ohio State truly played the top of their competition last season. So he was hurt. So a lot of the film, pretty much all of the film from Josh Simmons is against lower level talent. So that's always a difficult thing to gauge because you didn't get to see him play against the best of the Big Ten. You didn't get him, in the college football playoff run to a national championship. So a lot of that film is against lower level talent. The second issue, as we all know, I think by now, is that he had a patella injury. He had obviously surgery for that patella injury, so that's a big question. And apparently there could be more questions about Josh Simmons. Bob McGinn, who has been doing scouting reports forever. He's been doing, breakdowns of game film forever. He's the guy who actually taught Greg Bedard how to break down film and grade players and all that and chart things. He has a lot of connections to scouts. And during the draft time, he starts to put out a lot of different stories about what he's hearing from scouts around the league, what he's hearing about certain prospects. And according to Tyler Dunn's newsletter, here's what Bob McGinn had on Simmons. A scout told McGinn that Josh Simmons' issues are more about football character. Said he has a complete bleep sense of urgency, like a total finesse player. Mental is an issue. Lacks power, struggles to anchor, fundamentals are poor, plays like a guy that was at a JUCO and just came here. So that scout, it's one scout, but that scout was brutal evaluation of Josh Simmons to Bob McGinn. So that scout, not a fan. However, Jerry Thornton of Barstool Sports, he put together some of the stuff that's being said, some of the projections for Simmons around the good old interwebs. And Thornton had, from the 33rd team, Simmons is ranked as their 7th best prospect overall at any position. So the 33rd team has Josh Simmons as the 7th best prospect on their board. NFL mock draft database, which is based on a consensus of mocks, projects Simmons as the 4th offensive tackle off the board going to Houston at 25. Pro Football Focus includes Josh Simmons high among has him included in their 10 high-risk, high-reward prospects, I'll get it out, and landing in Miami with the 12th pick. So Pro Football Focus calls Josh Simmons high-risk, high-reward, has him going to Miami at number 12. NFL.com has Simmons going to the Patriots with their 2nd pick, number 38 overall. So when you look at Josh Simmons, you really have a different feel for where he's going to go depending on where you look. Some places say he's a top 10 talent. Some places say high risk, high reward. Some people say, he's going to go down to Houston at 25. He'll fall to the Patriots at 38. So it's really all over the map regarding Josh Simmons. I will say this. If you saw any video from Simmons' pro day, he was moving really well. And he said at the combine that he was ahead of schedule. Ian Rappaport at the time reported that Simmons got great medical. He got great medical information from the medical team at the combine. He graded out really well medically. They felt like he was well ahead of where he thought he might be. And when you watch the video of his pro day, he's moving around. So does that mean he's going to be out there in, July? I don't know. But there was some question whether or not he could be back on the field in 2025. You watch him at his pro day moving around like he was. He looks like, I'm not a doctor. I haven't checked his patella. He has not come by here to say hello to me. We haven't had a conversation, but it looks to me like he's moving around well enough to believe he will be ready for 2025. So he moved well at his pro day. He did, lift at the bench. He was great at the bench. And I would also say the last thing on Josh Simmons is relationships matter. Mike Vrabel obviously went to Ohio State, coached at Ohio State, has a bunch of ties to Ohio State. If anybody is going to get great intel about Simmons, it's going to be Vrabel. Vrabel is going to know what makes that guy tick. Is he a character issue? Does he have certain things going on the field? Vrabel is going to be able to find that out because he knows everybody that there is to know at Ohio State. He's close with Ryan Day. And again, Dan Hope of 11 Warriors said that Vrabel at the pro day spent a lot of time talking with Simmons. So was Vrabel trying to dig in to see what Simmons was about and trying to almost test him? So that's the Josh Simmons part of all this. Super chat. Nicody Barrows, thanks for the $10 super chat. Nicody, want to get your opinion on this scenario. Say no quarterbacks go in the top 3. Carter, Hunter, and Campbell are off the board. Who do you take? I'm going to get to that a little bit later. during this podcast, but it's one of the toughest things when you're looking at this draft is what Nakoti's talking about here, right? If Carter's off the board, if Hunter's off the board, Campbell's off the board, none of the quarterbacks go. Number one, Nakoti, I would say my number one option is that you would trade back. Find a team that wants Cam Ward. If Cam Ward's not gone by 4, I'm imagining you're getting phone calls. And the first option is to move back. Try to get a haul, move back. That's what I would do. If you can't move back for some reason, I mean, now you're looking at a bunch of prospects that we'll get into, but really they've all got questions. And that's what's going to make the Will Campbell conversation very interesting. Thank you again to Cody for the $10 super chat. I will answer your question more in depth coming up. So Will Campbell. Oh boy, Will Campbell. Will Campbell's going to be the death of me. I feel like Will Campbell is going to be the death of many of us. You know, the arm measurement thing has been bananas. It's been bananas. So at LSU's Pro Day, we all know by now, if you don't, Will Campbell, his arm length, 33-inch arm length. Now, if you're thinking that this was an LSU inside job, it wasn't. An NFL scout measured Will Campbell. It wasn't somebody from LSU. So Will Campbell measures at 33 inches. His wingspan, interestingly enough, was shorter at his pro day than it was at the combine. I don't know. I thought if your arms got longer, your wingspan has to get longer. I don't know. I have no explanation for that. I have no idea. But his arms are 33 inches at the pro day. You go back to the combine, his arms were 32 and 5/8. You go back to last spring, his arms were 32 and 7/8. Look, 32 and 7/8, 33 inches, it's negligible. I'm taking that as the number. If you look at the combine, and we've talked about this before, we talked about this on multiple podcasts. At the combine, something was wrong. Pretty much everybody, except I think Armand Membu. It was either him or Ariante Ursary. There was like one dude whose arms measured longer at the combine for some reason. Everybody else measured shorter. And Ozzie Trapillo, for example, you know, he measured at the combine at like 33 inches. He measured at the pro day at BC this week, 33 and a half inches. So, I mean, when you look at it, everybody across the board, aside from like one or two dudes, measured much shorter at the combine than at the Senior Bowl, at the East-West Shrine Bowl, or at the pro day. So I think it's safe to say we can take the combine numbers and just throw them out. Whatever happened that day, I don't know. They should never have that person measure arms again. So now you've got Will Campbell with 33-inch arms, and you've got his wingspan still being short. His wingspan is still so short that he would be a unicorn to be able to play left tackle. You know, if you look at the long history of measurements and all that stuff, you know, when you look at wingspan, Campbell would be the unicorn. Arm length 33, you feel better about it. You do. I feel better about it. I don't know if you feel better about it, but there are tackles and good tackles that play at around 33 inches, 32 and 7/8. Alaric Jackson's, I think, 32 and a half inches, for example. So there are examples of left tackles that play that have arms at 33 inches or slightly shorter. The wingspan is a bigger question, no pun intended. And, you know, how much that impacts him. And we've talked about this before. I'll bring it up again. I recorded a podcast earlier this week that we never used. My Patreon members actually got it because as I was releasing the podcast, the Stefon Diggs news came out. So I never got to it, but it was a podcast about Travis Hunter and Will Campbell. And what I've mentioned before, you know, when you watch Campbell, and I'm not an offensive line aficionado, okay? I'm not Greg Bedard. I'm not Evan Lazar. I'm not Taylor Kyles. I'm not going to sit here and break down all the minutia. But when you watch the film, when Will Campbell gets beat, which is not very often, but when he gets beat inside. And that's because he sets up so far outside. And he's setting up so far outside because he knows he doesn't have a big-time wingspan. So he's trying to cut off the speedy edge rushers off the edge. And the way he's doing that is he's positioning himself well outside, right? He's positioned far outside. So he's trying to get to those speedy pass rushers. So what happens? The speedy pass rushers see him setting up outside, and they know that he's going to be trying to take them off the edge. So what they do is they wrap around and they beat him inside. And so that's where he's getting beat on the pass rush. He's getting beat on the inside because he's trying to overcompensate at times for that shorter wingspan. Okay? So that's what's going on, the gist of Will Campbell's film and where he struggles. Now, Will himself at his pro day, I mean, I love his attitude. I do. I love Campbell's attitude. He's no nonsense. He's tough. He's physical. He's a leader of the team on the field, off the field. He just says all the right things. So he said this, quote, "For 2 years, nobody had any measurements on me, and nobody said anything about my play. So now, all of a sudden, arm length decides if I'm a good player or not. I think it's BS." Ross Tucker, former offensive lineman, as we know, here in New England, now a member of the media. There was this video that went out there, and Tucker said, 3/8 of an inch. Is that what we're talking about right now? I promise you, the difference between 33 inches and 32 and 5/8 of an inch is not going to determine whether or not he's a good player in the NFL. All right. So the Will Campbell stuff. He has visited the Patriots, so he has made a visit to Gillette. We know the Patriots are interested in Will Campbell. I've gone back and forth on Campbell. I'm not going to lie. You're going to say, Nick, you've been inconsistent on Campbell. I'm going to say, yeah, I know. But part of that is his arm length is shorter, then it's longer, then it's shorter, then it's longer, it's shorter, then it's longer. So as we get more information, especially when the information changes, then we have to kind of recalibrate. Again, I am not an offensive line aficionado, but here's how I feel, okay? With Campbell, and to go back to Nicode's super chat a little while ago when he mentioned, if Carter, Hunter, and Campbell are off the board, what do you do? Who do you take? Here's where I'm at. Let's say there's no Abdul Carter. Carter's gone. You're sitting there at 4, Carter's gone. Let's say that there's no Travis Hunter. I know this sucks. I feel hurt inside just saying it. But let's just say, hypothetically, there's no Carter, there's no Hunter. I think that most of you, maybe I'm wrong, I think most of you would say trade the pick, trade down. I agree with you. If you say that, I agree with you. If there's no Hunter, there's no Carter, the first thing I'm looking to do is to trade down from 4. I don't want to trade all the way down to like 18, but to trade down from 4. That, to me, those are your top 3 options. For me, I don't know if you agree. Let me know. Throw them in the comments. Do you agree? Those are the top 3 options. What are your top 3 options this draft? Hunter, Carter, trade. That's where I'm at. I think that's where a lot of people are at. I think many of us, see where we're at and how we feel. But I think Hunter, Carter, trade back are the top 3 options. Okay. So if there's no Carter, there's no Hunter, there's no trade back, what do you do? What do you do? Because as I think about Campbell, it's not just a Will Campbell exercise, it's a draft exercise. When I think about Will Campbell, I think about, if I'm not drafting Campbell, then who am I drafting? And here's the reality of it. The other names, there are questions. Like, there's no doubt that Will Campbell's wingspan is a gigantic question. But everybody else that you're looking at 4, if Hunter, Carter are gone and you can't trade back, everybody else, you have a question, right? Mason Graham, his size. You just signed Milton Williams. You hopefully have Christian Barmore coming back. Do you want to spend the 4th pick on Mason Graham? Tet McMillan, still the speed, right? When we did a podcast a couple weeks ago, it was similar to, or a week ago, it was similar to the Will Campbell arm thing, where it was like Tet McMillan broke a 4.5 at his pro day, and then all of a sudden it was, really, he ran like a 4.55. He ran like a 4.57. So you might love Tet McMillan, but he's got a serious question mark with his speed. Armand Membu, he's a right tackle. Now, Evan Lazar on Catch 22 this week did a great job. He explained how, it's really tough to go from right tackle to left tackle. And it might even be tougher to play left tackle after you played right tackle than having shorter arms. So Armand Membu is a right tackle. Do you want to spend the 4th pick on the draft at Armand Membu? Evan also talked about how Membu is a much better run blocker than he is a pass protection guy. You have Morgan Moses. You drafted Caden Wallace last year. Do you want to draft Armand Membu? Do you think he can move to the left? Do you want to try to move him to the left when you tried that with Caden Wallace and Chuks Okorafor last year, and we all know how that ended? I mean, you can literally go through every guy. Even Ashton Jeanty. Ashton Jeanty has had the football a ton in his college career. A ton of touches. Then you can talk about positional value at running back. So like all of these different options have questions. Brendan McCaffrey says Evans very biased towards Campbell. I'm not worried about his bias towards Campbell. He's absolutely right when you talk about right tackles, left tackles. He has the evidence. It's very difficult to move from the right side to the left side. It's a question. Not saying that Membu can't do it, but it's a question. Just like it's a question if Campbell can play left tackle full time. So everybody has these questions. Tyler Warren, tight end. How high is his ceiling? We can play. Shamar Stewart didn't want to work out at his pro day. Didn't work out at the combine. Wasn't very productive on the field when it comes to the sack numbers. He was good with pressures and all that stuff, but there's some questions about Shamar Stewart. Mykel Williams, more of a project, not there yet. Might never develop into the guy that you hope he can develop into. Jalen Walker's an interesting piece. But everybody has these questions. Once you get past Carter and Hunter, you have questions, and Campbell goes right along with that with his wingspan. So it's not easy. So here's where I'm at. Can Will Campbell play left tackle for you in 2025? I'm not asking if he can play left tackle great. Can he play left tackle in 2025? What if you draft Will Campbell at 4, and the plan is to play him at left tackle in 2025? And if he's having a tough time, then you help him. You can help a tackle. You can help the left tackle. Josh McDaniels can help the left tackle in many different ways. Greg Bedard has written about it. He's talked about it. Do you draft? Do you draft Campbell and you say, we're going to play him at left tackle because we believe he's a tackle? If you're the Patriots, we believe he's a tackle. He's got the film at the SEC level. We're going to play him at left tackle. If he's an average left tackle, then you get through, right? You get through 2025 with average left tackle play. And then you make the evaluation of whether or not he can get better or that's the best he's going to be. If that's the best he's going to be, do you slide him back into guard? Now, I know we've talked about drafting a guard at 4 would pretty much be a disaster. But as I've also said, all drafts are snowflakes. They're all different. So in this draft, if I told you Will Campbell was going to be an all-pro guard, if I told you he was going to be a 6 or 7-time Pro Bowler, he was going to make at least one all-pro team, if not 2 all-pro teams at guard, and he got you through 2025 at left tackle. Let's say that's the hypothetical because that's what we're dealing with. That's what we're dealing with. So let's say he gets you through 2025 with average left tackle play. Then you go into 2026's offseason trying to find the left tackle of the future, and maybe the draft is much better next year when it comes to left tackle. Maybe you can address it and get a true franchise stud left tackle in the 2026 draft. Maybe you can trade for one. Maybe you can sign one. But you've got Campbell in there at left tackle as a stopgap. You don't want that at the 4th pick, right? But he wouldn't be a stopgap left tackle his entire career. If you slid him into guard and he ends up being an all-pro level guard, well, let me ask you this. Is it better to have an all-pro level guard or have a guy who's a defensive end who might make 2 or 3 Pro Bowls? What's more important to you? If you have a guy who could, if let's say Jalen Walker's ceiling, every time I think about that, I think of Michael Jordan. His ceiling is the roof. Let's say that Jalen Walker's ceiling is a Pro Bowler. He makes a Pro Bowler too. Will Campbell's ceiling is an all-pro. Is it not better to draft the all-pro at 4 than the Pro Bowler? I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I'm continuing to think about it. But if there's no Hunter, there's no Carter, there's no trade option, Will Campbell's in the mix. He's in the mix. He's in the mix. More thoughts in a minute. I want to talk about the quarterback situation in the draft and how it might impact the Patriots and what's going on. The latest news on all that. Head honcho, 757. What's up, 757? I was down there last week. Had a great time. Love the show. Now that we have Diggs, would you still feel comfortable with the Pats trading 38th for Ayuk? Imagine them then trading pick 4 to the Jets for 7 and 42, getting Gentry and Ursery. I'm out on Ayuk now that you have Diggs. I don't want 2 guys coming off ACL injuries. I have no interest. I don't want to pay, $26 million guaranteed to Diggs and pay tens of millions of guaranteed money to Brandon Ayuk when they're both coming off ACLs. I like the idea of Ayuk. You still need an X who can truly get down the field consistently because Diggs really isn't that guy anymore. At least I don't think he is. I like the idea of an Ayuk type, but I personally would not take that risk. I would not trade for Ayuk now that you have Diggs. I don't want 2 guys whose ACLs have exploded. And the trade to the Jets is an interesting one. Look, I'm in for trading down from 4 if Carter and Hunter aren't there. If it's for head honcho says 4 and he says 7 and 42 for 4. Yeah, I'd absolutely do that trade. If Hunter and Carter aren't there, 100% I'd move down to 7. All right, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. We're going to get to the quarterbacks. Try to wrap this up in less than 10 minutes. Like, comment, subscribe. All right. If Hunter and Carter are gone, are they gone? First and foremost, sounds like Cam Ward is going to go number 1. Whether that's to Tennessee or somewhere else, sounds like he is going number 1. It sounds like the Titans are beginning to truly fall in love with him more and more by the day. I would be at this point shocked if Cam Ward is not picked number 1. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders, he's going through some private workouts. He's going through private workouts with both Cleveland, Tennessee. He's doing that whole spiel. So Sanders is still out there, I think, trying to sell himself as a top 3 pick. Abdul Carter, who, as we said earlier, is visiting the Patriots, he had dinner with Cleveland recently. Adam Schefter reported that Carter had dinner with the Cleveland Browns, including ownership. So, I mean, look, if you're having dinner with ownership, it certainly feels like to me that means that dude's likely going to that team. Now, maybe that's not the case. Maybe Abdul Carter threw up on the table and ruin his chances at dinner. I have no idea. But if you're taking a guy out for dinner, it feels to me that you are super interested in Abdul Carter at number 2. So Abdul Carter went out to dinner with the Browns ownership. Sanders is having private workouts with the top 2 teams. Cam Ward had dinner with Tennessee. He's playing footsie with the Titans all week long. I think he's going to Tennessee at number 1. So inevitably, here are the questions. There's been a lot of talk about this, and I wanted to get into it badly because I've been hearing it all week. The Giants signed Russell Wilson. Some people think that means the Giants are not going to draft a quarterback in the top 3. Some people say that it doesn't matter that they signed Russell Wilson, that they could still draft a quarterback in the top 3. Those are Twitter people. Those are fans. Those are media members. Those are NFL insiders. So there's been this back and forth of how much does Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston change the math for the Giants regarding a quarterback in the draft. I don't think it makes as much of an impact as others do. And to me, this is a math game. It's a financial game. Do you know how much money Russell Wilson is guaranteed? He signed a 1-year deal. What's the guaranteed money? Throw the comment in. Like, comment, subscribe. Throw those comments in. Tell the fine people how much Russell Wilson is guaranteed with that contract with the Giants. I'll give you 3 seconds to do it. 3, 2, 1. Nobody's showing off. Russell Wilson is guaranteed $10.5 million. So that contract with the Giants is a 1-year deal. It guarantees him $10.5 million. Jacoby Brissett with the Arizona Cardinals is making $8 million guaranteed. Russell Wilson's contract, folks, is a backup quarterback contract. Now, it's at the top of the backup quarterback tier, but that's backup quarterback money. Daniel Jones just signed a contract with the Colts for like $14 million guaranteed. Russell Wilson is making less guaranteed money than Daniel freaking Jones. Russell Wilson's contract does not tell me one thing. And I know he went out there at the press conference. He talked about starting. Of course, he's Russell Wilson. He thinks he should be starting until he's 75. $10.5 million guaranteed, okay? $10.5 million guaranteed is backup money. Borderline starter money, but really backup money. So Russell Wilson's contract tells us that the Giants are not necessarily sold that Russell Wilson is going to be their QB1 for 17 weeks. Then you move on to Jameis Winston. I had to look this up, and I'll look it up again live just to make sure I'm right. I had to look this up multiple times last night for Jameis Winston. Do you know how much Jameis Winston gets guaranteed in 2025 from the New York Giants? 0. Zoop. A big fat 0. Jameis Winston is not guaranteed anything beyond what you get guaranteed when you sign in the NFL, which I think is like, 55, 60 grand, whatever it is. So Jameis Winston does not get really any guaranteed money according to Spotrac. So the combined guaranteed money for Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson is $10.5 million. So the contracts tell us that A, Russell Wilson is not necessarily the starting quarterback for the team. He might end up being the guy, but the contract doesn't tell us that. And B, Jameis Winston has the type of contract where he could get cut. Jameis Winston is making 0, 0, 0 guaranteed. Joshua Dobbs of your New England Patriots is making almost $4 million guaranteed. Joshua Dobbs is making 4 times the money guaranteed than Jameis Winston is. So what do the contracts tell us? The contracts tell us that Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston are not guaranteed a damn thing when it comes to being a quarterback in New York. If Russell Wilson was going to be the guy, we're talking $15 million guaranteed, $15 million to $20 million guaranteed. We're talking almost, double what he got. $10.5 million, and really it's $10 million guaranteed. I think it's like $500,000 with another guarantee, but let's just call it 10.5. $10.5 million guaranteed guarantees that Russell Wilson will be at least the backup quarterback for the New York Giants. Jameis Winston doesn't have any guaranteed money to his contract, which means he could be cut any moment. He could be cut 5 minutes from now. He could be traded. He has no guaranteed money. He could be the third quarterback, the emergency quarterback. He could be selling beers at MetLife Stadium this year. That contract tells us that, Jameis Winston is not seen as the guaranteed backup quarterback. He has the opportunity to be that guy. So if you look at just the contracts, the Giants are not guaranteeing either Wilson or Winston will be starting, and they're not even guaranteeing that Jameis Winston will make the freaking team. So I don't believe that Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson immediately, unequivocally take the Giants out of the Shedeur Sanders contest. Now, will they take Sanders? I'm not saying they'll take Sanders. They might take another rookie quarterback. They might draft a guy in the second round, third round, fourth round. I don't know. But the contracts tell us they can cut or trade Jameis Winston whenever they want to. If they draft Shedeur Sanders, let's say over the next month, right? Maybe the Giants are just trying to figure out if they love Sanders enough to draft him third. If they fall in love with him before you get to draft night, right? Or he wins you over. You're close right now, but he runs through the tape before the draft. On draft night, the Giants could easily draft Shedeur Sanders at 3, and they could easily, that next day on the Friday, trade Jameis Winston to another team for like a 6th-round pick, or they could just cut him. So I don't think Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson are going to keep any team from drafting a quarterback that they think is the future guy. Now, the question is whether or not the Giants think Shedeur Sanders is that future guy, and I don't know that, and you don't know that. You don't know what you don't know. I do know that the Wilson and Winston contracts tell us that the Giants don't believe that they have the surefire, guaranteed answer for QB1 in 2025. That's what those contracts tell us. And they have Tommy DeVito, too. I mean, Tommy DeVito might be making more guaranteed money than Jameis Winston. And if you are Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, the GM and the head coach for the Giants, are you really going to tie your security to Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston? Maybe you say yes to that. If so, good luck to you. I'm telling you right now, if I were Brian Daboll and I'm coaching for my job and I'm told that Russell Wilson is going to be my starting quarterback in 2025, I might as well start packing my bags. I might as well call it a career in New York. Joe Schoen's going to go to John Mara and say, hey, look, we got Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. John Mara said at the press conference when he told the world that he was not firing those two guys, John Mara told everybody he wants to see the future of the quarterback position in New York. Last time I checked, Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston would not be categorized as the future of the quarterback position in any place. So if you're Schoen and you're Daboll, do you really tie yourself at the hip to Russell Wilson? Maybe. Again, if so, good luck. I wouldn't. I would absolutely not do that. I would not be comfortable with that idea. I would not be excited about that idea. Now, if you draft Shedeur Sanders, you don't have to start Shedeur Sanders. Not right out of the gates. But you have somebody to sell John Mara in ownership. You can sell them on Shedeur Sanders. Because if you end up with that Winston concocted contract, if you end up moving on from Jameis Winston, again, which you can easily do, you can trade him for a late round pick, a day 3 pick, you can cut him, whatever, right? Tommy DeVito and Jameis Winston they're not standing in the way of the future of the quarterback position. It's not happening. Okay. So if you're Schoen and you're Daboll, you draft Shedeur Sanders. And again, I don't know if they're going to draft him. Hypothetically, if you draft Shedeur Sanders at 3, you begin the year thinking we're going to start Russell Wilson, much like the Patriots did with Jacoby Brissett and Drake May, right? You start Russell Wilson. If Russell Wilson plays winning football, well, now in next year's draft, you don't have to be worried about being quote unquote punished by Russell Wilson winning 7 or 8 games and you having the 15th to 20th pick and trying to figure out how you're going to get a quarterback in the 2026 draft because you already drafted Shedeur Sanders. So Shedeur Sanders is that guy of the future. If Russell Wilson wins some football games, you don't have to worry about overpaying next year to try to find the quarterback that might not even be there. There's no guarantee that the Giants can find a quarterback next year in the draft that's any better than Shedeur Sanders is right now. So if you have Sanders to back up Russell Wilson, you get rid of Jameis Winston and Tommy DeVito, or at least one of those two guys. Then at least if you start the season 1-5 and John Mara comes down and he looks to fire you, you can say, whoa, wait a minute. We're going to go to Shedeur Sanders. We got the future of the team, John. Give us to the rest of the year. That makes more sense to me. And we can have the same exact conversation about the Cleveland Browns with, Kirk Cousins, if he ends up going there, which the contract will be very interesting, and Kenny Pickett. Have the same conversation. Is Kevin Stefanski going to tie himself to a 36, 37-year-old quarterback who's, came off the Achilles last year and did not look like the same guy, and Kenny Pickett, who has not done anything in the NFL? Stefanski's in the same kind of position and Andrew Berry as Daboll and Schoen are in New York. So are they going to tie themselves to Kenny Pickett and Kirk Cousins? Schoen and Daboll going to tie themselves to Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston? Again, the answer might be maybe. It might be yes. But I'm not sitting here telling you that it's a guarantee. I still believe that 2 quarterbacks can go in the top 3. We'll see how that changes over the next few weeks as we get more information. But I always lean towards teams feeling desperate at quarterback will reach for quarterbacks. That's how I always feel, because it always happens. And if you're the Giants, as delusional Patriots fan talks about, I'm not even sure he's thought about the Giants or not. I just see the comment. Trading up is not always a guarantee. Absolutely. We talked about this last year with Drake May. Do you draft Drake May at 3, or do you trade down and try to find your quarterback? Do you trade back in and try to? No. If you love the guy, if you think that quarterback can be the future quarterback of your franchise, then you draft him. You don't play games. Bird in the hand. Bird in the hand. If the Giants feel like Shedeur Sanders is their quarterback of the future, you draft him at 3 because you don't want to risk losing him, because there's no guarantee that you get anybody better than him. There's no guarantee that you can trade back into the first round and draft him. There's no guarantee that you can find somebody in the 2026 draft. There's no guarantee that, let's put it this way, if there are 3 teams at the top of the 2026 draft that all need quarterbacks, what do the Giants do next year? They walk into the 2026 draft and go, damn it, we really need a quarterback still, but the top 3 teams all need quarterbacks. So it looks like now we're going to be drafting the 4th best quarterback in the 2026 quarterback class. There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee for Cleveland. All right, we've gone just over an hour. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Let's build the community. Everything Pats and New England Patriots podcast, Spotify, Apple Pods. Trying to take over the world? Not really. I just want to take over the block. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. And don't forget to enjoy your weekend. Talk to you soon. Peace.